Hey, thank you so much for agreeing to contribute to our Get on Board Week again. For most of you who are watching this video, I just wanted to say thank you. I wanted to ground you in some of our what we've learned are the best practices, just so that you have a framework and maybe some new ideas for how to think about delivering great content for women. So I think most of you have told us that you love the sense of community that you get at How Women Lead, and also how practical we are. That things aren't just theoretical, and I just want to remind you that that's intentional. And there's some ways that we do a good job at that. And by the way, we would love to hear from you if there are things. I would love to hear from you if things that you think we can do better, either content we should deliver or ways we should deliver content that could be better. But this is what I know. I've been through all these adult learning trainings. There's some basic things about how adults learn. First and foremost, you need to ground in what people already know. We're adults, we can check out if we aren't getting value from something. And really making sure they understand you've asked them and you know what they already know is really important. I'm sure you've experienced this where you're in something and someone wants to take up all the airspace talking about how important they are. That's because the anxiety that happens for some people by not actually knowing if the content's going to be delivered at the right level starts to stress them out. And so I think just starting out at the very beginning, a good example of this, you've probably seen us do this, is we'll do polls. We'll have people say, we'll just say, how many of you have been on a nonprofit board, a corporate board, an advisory board, and a venture-backed board. So we'll try and get a sense of where people are at. It also helps you as a facilitator really understand how to deliver or refine the content a little bit or put more emphasis on something. So you're hitting both of those two birds with one stone and really making sure that the audience feels like, okay, they get that I'm not a total novice or whatever it is, right? Or that it's gonna, or if you are, that you know that you need to start at square one. So we think that's super important. I also think we also know that even if you can get more narrow on some of those questions and what they already know about something, you actually kind of trigger them to start to think about, oh yeah, I do know something here. We all come with different um, fears, different issues of learning, whatever that come with us when we go into learning environment. And some of these are the ways that you really help people understand. You already know quite a bit. You'll often hear me say this. It's like, you already know a lot of this. We're just demystifying it so you know what you already know. And I think as adult learners, that's what we want to experience, like that sense of like, oh, I already knew a lot of this. Yay. That feels great. I walk away from this session not feeling like an idiot. Sometimes you go to sessions and it's all just didactic talking at you, and you walk away also feeling like, I don't know, what could I really, replicate of this? It wasn't right sized, and therefore you kind of feel like you're not, like, wow, this mountain's too high for me to even try and tackle because I don't have enough time. That's an unsuccessful delivery for an adult learner. The other thing is really grounding them in what is the reason for them learning this. You can also think about this as sort of like, what is the realistic implementation of this. So just asking them, hey, is your goal to learn more about the nom and gov committee because you're going to be the chair of one, because you're going to serve on one as a new member, or because you're the CHRO and you're staffing this at your corporation? So really understanding how are people going to use this information. It has a lot of benefits. So asking people, what is your goal with learning this content? How will this have an impact on the outcome? It also gets them more invested in learning and less, it kind of breaks down some of the theoretical connections and gets them into practicality. They are also, adult learners do better when they have some self-direction and autonomy. There's a couple different ways you can think through this, but I would just say in the simplest way, remember, in every group, if you do one modality, and have you been in those groups, and someone like me who talks too much will take up all the airspace. That gets really aggravating for quite a few people, including you, the facilitator. So breaking things up so you have, let's say in a 1 hour session, for the next 3 minutes, give them 5, whatever, break it, do it a couple times, but giving them at least some time to write things down so they actually can get things out of their head, what they're learning, how they would tackle this issue, how would they present on this. That, just one-on-one time, even if it's really short, is a really important grounding for a lot of people, especially introverts need some of that. I need to think about what I just heard time. Then you've got pair work where people can learn, they're learning and bouncing ideas off of other people in a safe, small environment. Sometimes you can do that in a group of 3 or 5. You get to 5 and it can start to be dominated by personalities for sure. And there's some things you can do when you set up those breakouts to say, like, make sure everybody has equal airtime, or some version of that. Or like if anyone is a problem child, assigning them to facilitate and make sure everybody's heard is a good one. So there's different modalities in which people learn. And I think those are really critical to be thinking about in the delivery of longer content. And if you are delivering content and you don't have a design or a lot of time for interactivity or different modalities, some of the things that I think are critical to embed, remember, more than 10 minutes of talking at people and you lose them, even if they're super committed to the content. And so the way that you can break that up, and you've probably seen me try to do this, is I'll say, what percentage of people do you think are, in the United States, represent this number? And just that forcing function, it gives it, it's 15 seconds. But you're forcing people to sort of think instead of just zone out and listen to what you're saying. So they're engaging with you a bit with what they already know as well. So peppering that in between, or saying to people, have you ever had an experience with, or how many, or just raise your hands, how many of you have ever had this happen? It is really, it's unbelievably powerful to see the outcomes change about how people engage with and what they're learning along the way. I think the other thing is, if you're doing more than 10 minutes of content, even just breaking it up at 10 minutes and saying, okay, what are the top 3 things that you learned? Put it in the chat and let's see what's most salient for people. Or what are the things that you still need to hear in order to feel like you got enough out of this content delivery? The other thing is you can break it up then, and you can actually do a little bit of a quiz, like, okay, based on what I said, what do you think is the right answer here? All of those things break up that content delivery where you can actually lose people pretty significantly. You're also continuing, in some of these examples, continuing to get their recommitment to learning the content, depending on how you ask the question, and why did you come here today? What is your goal with coming here? Or even, and when I do stuff for like how women invest, I'll say, what is your one area of expertise that you're known for? So those are examples of way I'm sort of connecting them to the content of what we're doing and getting them to show up and be seen, which is really important for adults. You want them to feel also like they're getting to show their expertise, or maybe even, when you're surveying people about your areas of expertise or your expertise on a specific topic, is there anyone here who considers themselves a master in this topic? Now, let's say you're doing a 1-hour delivery of content, not 10 minutes, right? You might say, well, Jill, not knowing Jill and her real mastery level, why don't we do a 5-minute fireside chat? Or Jill, would you give us your 5 top tips in this area? Control it, but give that person an opportunity to be engaging with the activity, or people being able to be identified with expertise. And I'll remind you, stories, especially stories that are really relatable for other people, like, oh, do you remember how you began COVID and did X, or something that would be like universal, can be really powerful ways to deliver content and sharing experiences. So I'll send you an overview that's probably too long, but you can pick and choose what's interesting to you. But just wanted to make sure that you understand there's a strategy behind some of this guidance we're giving you. And it really is about the successful experience with the content that the people who are participating get to have. And some of it may not be your job to do alone, but like you might be able to help us with what the survey is at the beginning of a session, even though you're 2/3 of the way in doing a panel or something. So thank you very much again for contributing of yourself. Please let me know how we can support you and make sure that you are getting seen for the generosity and excellence and expertise that you have. We could turn your content into an article, probably a lot of things we can do with you and for you. All right, thank you so much. Look forward to a great Get on Board week.